And so today, thank you guys all for joining us for our How to Read a Prelim class. Today we have a guest speaker, which is Bill Thomas. Bill Thomas is a VP, LA County Manager and Advisory Title Officer. I got that correct, right, Bill? I actually wrote it down. He's got more titles than you can imagine, so I had to write it down. So anyway, Bill Thomas is our, as he said, sort of a jack of all trades with our company. He's been doing this for, I don't know, 30-something years. I'll let him give a brief description about himself. But Bill and I have been working together for 20 years. And part of the reason why I think it's important to use California title is I consider myself and our other colleagues, the sales reps, as liaisons to Bill Thomas and Bill's team of the title officers and the whole title units. You know, we know what a great job they do inside. So it's our obligation to try and get business for you guys to get your deals closed by getting you to Bill and his team. So that's why I wanted to Bill come on today and do a talk on how to read a prelim. A lot of us I see on the screen have been doing this for a long time, and others are brand new. So I think you're going to learn, regardless of how long you've been in the industry, some things from Bill. So that's my spiel on Bill, and I'll let Bill introduce himself, and then Bill, just tell me when you want me to show the prelim.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Thanks for letting me join you this morning. Finally, Brett got my title right, and in his defense, my title has changed throughout the years often. So, you know, that's why he gets it all mixed up there. So I like that, Brett. Thank you. But yeah, I've been in the industry since 1988, and came to California Title in 2001. We opened the doors together in the branch in Los Angeles here. Brett and I back in 2001. So we've been here almost 20 years.
Yep.
In any event, so what we want to talk about a little bit today is going over the preliminary report. And I know you guys seen the report, but there's some red flags we want to kind of point out what to kind of look at that can kind of steer the file awry to hold up the recording. And it's kind of really important to understand the whole report, what it is. And I'll start off by talking about the fact that the report is an application of a policy. It's not the actual policy. It's not the final product that's going to be issued. So we still have to do some searches when we actually open the title report and do our property index search. We still have to do a general index search, and anything that comes in between can also change our search. So we kind of point that out at the beginning of this report in the first page, that it's not a policy, so don't rely on it 100% yet, because we're not at a position to record or enclose just yet. So there is a little bit of a process, but this is the preliminary report, basically our preliminary search, that we actually go ahead and search the property records that are disclosed to us by the county recorder. One of the things I kind of want to point out on the report, if we can just maybe scroll it up a little bit, Brett. And so there's 2 dates on the report. Yeah, that was perfect how you had it a second ago. There's 2 dates on the report that everybody kind of gets confused about. So the date of the report on the top is the date that the report was produced, typed up, sent out to the escrow, and that was, in this case, January 11, 2005. The bottom date is where our records derive from, and where it says January 6, 2005. So this is what the Los Angeles County, or in this case, San Diego County recorder provided to us records up to that date. So anything between January 6th and January 11th hasn't been researched. So let's just say we're going to close on January 12th. We ensure that gap. So part of the things that we do as insurance is we'll ask for an owner's affidavit and such forth from the homeowner, just to make sure that they haven't recorded anything in between. Just let us know if you hadn't, then we're good to go forward. If we're all set, we did all our research on the general index. We've done all our research on the ownership, who's authorized to sign. Then we can go ahead and close, and we cover that gap. Right now in Los Angeles County, because of COVID, the gap is about 20 days. So we'll say that we're on October we'll say we're on September 30th when we issue the report. The actual plant date's like September 10th. So it's a big gap. So you'll see now that we're putting out an owner's affidavit asking for the homeowner to just let us know if they've recorded anything in between. Maybe they got an equity line while they were in the process of going through the escrow to do something. So we'll ask for that kind of thing.
And what that
So
means,
we go on.
let me just step in there really quick. And what that means is if something was recorded today at their county recorder's office, not any fault to ours, but the county recorders will upload it into the system, but it could take about 20 days for it to be searchable for us. So that's what Bill's talking about. If I record something today, it's not going to show up for, 2 weeks or 10 days at times. So that's what he's referring to. There we go.
So if you have someone that says, hey, I put my property into the trust like maybe 2 days ago, and why aren't you picking it up? That's because we don't have that record yet. So just keep that in mind if someone ever did tell you that. The bottom date of the preliminary report is the date that actually our records have been produced to us by the county recorder. That's where that happens. Where a lot of times you'll have someone that says they changed their title into their trust, and then it's not in our report because of that issue. So let's go on to the next page.
I want to check,
if we
Bill,
can,
I want to talk really quick about the bottom of this page really quick, the Alto residential. So this is basically what type of policy you're going to receive. And so the Alto policy is the default policy in the car contract. So when you guys are reviewing prelims, make sure you look at the bottom of it to make sure you're getting the Alto policy instead of the CLTA policy. Alto policy is substantially more coverage, and it's only 10% more, but it's the default policy. So sometimes we see a little bit of bait and switching going on where people title companies will just throw in a CLTA because they're trying to get the deal for and they could say, oh, I'm only going to charge you this much when XYZ title is going to charge you 10% more. So sometimes we see that, and I've seen numerous of those, so much that I've actually had talks with Martha Mosier about this, and she wants me to make sure I remind you guys that to look at that or what type of policy you have, because it actually is a violation of the contract. Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if you're taking questions. So if we're doing, we're not using you guys, it's a buyer side.
Yeah.
And it comes up CLTA. You're saying go back in there and say no.
Go back and say, hey, you go back to escrow and say, hey, per the contract, paragraph 14, this is an Alto policy is what the contract says. You need to change this. So yes, definitely make sure you do that.
Yeah, be careful with that. That's a good point, Brett. Right there will be disclosed to you what kind of policy is going to be contemplated. And what the CLTA is just recorded matters. There's not all the great bells and whistles that the Alto homeowners policy has. The Alto homeowners policy has coverage with respect to violations to CCNRs, encroachments of the property, certain zoning coverages, and certain permit coverages. The CLTA has none of that, so it's very limited. And if you do see that, you just got to find out from the escrow or the title company why they're asking to issue a CLTA instead of an ALTA policy. A commercial piece of property or a multifamily residence over 5 units would not get an Alto homeowners policy. So that's designed only for 1 to 4. So if that was that kind of structure that you had, that may be the reason why. The other thing, it's supposed to be designed for a natural person. So if your buyer is an LLC, but it's 100% owned by one person, there's an endorsement for that, so we can actually offer the Alto homeowners policy. So just keep in mind, if you see that in that section, you might want to talk to us or whoever's handling the title as to why they're saying that the contemplated policy is CLTA. That's a good point, Brett. So the next page is basically Schedule A. No, you leave it right there. Schedule A is everything that's in favor of the property. So we'll talk about, you'll see a fee, a leasehold estate, condominium estate. We'll put that all in there. And a fee, of course, if everybody knows, a fee means that you own the land underneath, the sky above, including the structures. A leasehold means you only have a lease ownership to the property. So you gotta be careful about that. A condominium, defined under the California Civil Code, means that only you own the structure and not the land underneath or the sky above. So that will show up in that section of the report. Then you'll see the ownership vesting in the report where it says title or to said estate or interest date hereof is vested in. So basically this is going to eventually change to your buyer's insured name, but this is the current owner's name. And if you see someone other than who is supposed to be your seller, then you need to find out why we're showing that and get to us and say, hey, my seller is supposed to be this person. It could be that document that recorded in the gap. It could be something that recorded in between and we still subject to that. And we said, well, we need to go through trust documents before we can actually pass on to title to your seller. So that's where that would be shown. And everything in Schedule A is your, which is in favor of the property. Now,
Bill, I'll talk to him about uninsured deeds. It could also be an uninsured deed. It might have happened 3 years ago, but it's still.
Yes. So what will happen is we'll say like this is John Doe and Mary Doe, husband and wife, joint tenants, subject to item whatever in our report. So if you see that, so all of a sudden now we have an uninsured deed that's in the report. And what an uninsured deed is basically no title company has vetted the deed that recorded in between. So keep in mind as when we insure, we're not just insuring this matters that are against the seller. We're insuring matters against every owner that own title to the property. So we go back all the way to the beginning of when the property developed. We'll use a starter to kind of shortcut that type thing, but our insurance goes all the way back to the beginning of time. So if there's liens against a former owner and it was not vetted by a title company, we have to vet that and clear that. And that's when you'll see subject to, and this is what Brett's talking about, uninsured deeds. We'll have to make sure that the seller or that former owner did intend to give it to the current seller with no expectations of receiving any kind of monies. And then we'll have to clear their general index as well. So that will go through that whole process, and it does take a little bit of time.
And basically, an uninsured deed is if someone just goes down to the recorder's office and records a deed against the property. So that's uninsured. It didn't go through a vetting of us. So that does happen a lot pre-COVID. People would just go down and record deeds. So we want to make sure we just vet it. That's in a simple term.
Correct.
And is that a quick claim deed? Like
it could be.
It could be.
It could be. It could be. It could be the parents transfer the title to the children, through the process of maybe they were entitled in their trust and they said, okay, now the terms of the trust allow us to transfer it over to the children now. That may happen, but we still have to vet that deed and we have to go through their general index of the parents to make sure there's no liens that are going to affect the title. So those are kind of common things. You might have co-ownership where they got divorced. Husband and wife were on title and the husband had to give up the property due to the divorce. We have to vet that deed as well. Make sure that he's not expecting any kind of retro money back from the property. So those are the kind of things that we look at. You might have a co-partnership where you have an LLC with two different LLCs owning the property. One transfers it over to another, like they bought out the other one. We have to vet all that. We have to verify that happened. So that's what we do in our process. Uninsured deeds are a red flag because it can actually hold up your escrow transaction. So just be really cognizant about that. And if you see that, get in touch with us and we'll let you know what we have to do with it and clear it up. And then just real quick, a little caveat to the next drop down. Again, remember I talked about it being in favor of us. So in the county recorder does not know the property as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Ventura Boulevard. What they know it as is a description of lot and tract, and that's how it's described in the preliminary report. It's going to be described as lot 7, and you'll see that in your documents that get recorded. They always have, and they should always have a legal description attached to it, because the county recorder will never be able to figure it out if you just put an address on there. In fact, they won't even accept it if it just has an address now. They do require the legal description always be attached. to the deed, and that's their description of their property. That's what they know it as, lot 7 of the parity tract. But okay, let's go on to the next one. So now we go into the actual section of Schedule B where all the red flags would show up. This is everything that's an encumbrance against the property, whether it's a CCNR, an easement, a lien, a mortgage, taxes, all that will be disclosed in Schedule B. And this is where all the red flags would show up. So what we'll start out is we'll show you what the property taxes are. In this case, they're paid, and so we're going to show you that they're paid, and they're only there for proration purposes for the escrow to use. Then the next section, the next actual exception is what is called the lien of supplemental taxes. It's kind of tricky, and we show that, and that'll always stand on the policy as well, because California has Proposition 13. So because of Proposition 13, the California counties can only reassess property when they actually request permits to improve the property, or there's a transfer of the title. Some transfers are exempt, but so think about this. So they can only do an incremental increase of about 2% per year, 1 to 2% per year. The property value in California increases faster than that. So if you have somebody who has ownership to a property since 1970s, and they've done no permits, they've done no transfers, they're going to probably have the original assessment from the 1970s with just a little bit of 2% incremental increases. So the value of the property could be at $200,000. And then now they're going to sell it for $1 million. So what happens is the assessor has the right, because of Proposition 13, to do a 1-year reassessment to the seller and the buyer for that tax year. So if they bought it in November of 2020, they would get hit with a supplemental bill. The buyer would get hit with a supplemental bill down the line for the reassessment to bring it up to the true value for the 2020 tax year, 2020-21 tax year. So you see that often, and a lot of people come back and say, "Oh, wait, why did I get the supplemental bill?" Well, that's because of the Proposition 13. The property was never really at the true assessed value, and the escrow could never actually prorate that, because they don't know, nobody knows the formula that the county uses. Unfortunately, they have some secret formula that they use. So the only thing that the escrow can do is prorate on what's a public record at this point, and it may be far below what is actually going to be reassessed. Now, I know the escrows explained that very well to the buyers now about Proposition 13 and the lien of supplemental taxes, but that is there because of that reason here in the state of California. Who knows? I think there's a vote coming up that may be overturned very soon, and that may change the whole concept of how the California counties assess their properties. But that's something to keep in mind of, as far as being able to explain to your buyers when they and even your sellers, because they'll get an unsecured bill down the line as well. So I want to bring that up to everybody about that, because a lot of people get these supplemental bills and they don't know what to do with them. So the next things, we'll start dropping into the actual recorded documents against the property. So remember, what we do in the preliminary stages, we actually search the property index, and then we'll pick up easements, we'll pick up covenants, CCNRs, and covenant agreements. And these are things that could either be like the easement could be a public utility easement for a public utility company, or it could be a private easement for like ingress egress for a homeowner, or a sewer easement for a next door neighbor, or a set of next door owners where they can actually have a right of way to go across your property, either to maintain it, or let's say in this case you have the sewer easement, we need to have the sewer line laid in a certain area of the property where the water needs to run and the lines need to run. So those are things that we're going to show in the report. Most times there will be a description to it. So like the number 1 showed the northerly 5 feet, which is kind of real simple. It's probably at the front of the property or the back of the property. Some of them get really detailed, and you might want to reach out to us, and we'll plot easements for you just to show you where they are, because you may have a buyer that may want to actually do some kind of remodeling to the property, or maybe even add a pool into the property. You want to make sure that they don't actually overlap into that area where they're contemplating it. So that's something you might want to reach out to Brett if you get a report, one of our reports, and we don't show the location of it. We might have to issue plotted easements for you so you can see exactly where they lay, because you may have a buyer who may want to do some future work to the property. So keep that in mind if you do have a buyer that wants that.
Yeah,
do you have any thoughts on that, Brett?
Yeah, especially when your clients say, I want to build a pool in the backyard, make sure we do this. I've had one, this is probably 15 years ago, that they wanted to do it. And it turned out there was a pipe that was right through diagonally through the backyard. So they couldn't do the pool. It actually killed the deal. So yeah, make sure you do, if you have something like that, let us know. Now, Bill, if you could explain really quick, some of these things are very easy. Like it says normally 5 feet of said land for this easement, but some of them are so old that we can't even plot them, Bill. So what happens in that case? Yeah. What I mean is the description is so bad.
Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes what happens is the description, they'll just say over all the lots. Some of the developers will reserve a public utility easement for public utility companies in the future, and what they'll say is over all the lots in the tract. So then they give us no ability to actually describe it. Typically when that happens, it's going to be in a in an area where all the other public utilities are, but you'll never be able to find that unless you actually call the public utility company, so at maybe DWP, SoCal Ed, Southern Cal Gas,
yeah, but it doesn't
that kind
tell
of
you
thing.
which one it is.
Unfortunately, we're unable to plot that when the actual document says that from the original developer. And like this one was from 1935. It may even say that. It may just say over lot 7 or all the lots in the Paradise Island tract. So we just got to be real careful on that we can verify that. And if we can't, that's something I think you have to maybe have investigated with your local public utility companies.
Okay.
So Brett, is that?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah. Yeah. So so some of the other things that we'll pick up is come as condition restrictions. You'll get them. A lot of people only say, I only see those typically when there's a planned unit development or a condominium, and these are restrictions where you actually have restrictions to the property in the area. So say they want to have some kind of setback requirement for each of the properties, just to be consistent throughout the land. The CCNRs will have that. So we'll have a private CCNR maybe that shows against all the lots, and maybe they'll have even a height restriction here. So if someone's like planning to build a second story on a house that's only a 1-story home, you got to be very careful in reading the CCNRs. They may have a restriction for a second story. So that's where that would show up in the CCNRs. If you're dealing with a condominium, you may want to look at those CCNRs to see if you have a buyer who has pets. Some associations don't allow pets into the properties, or if they do allow pets in the property, they may not allow a certain amount of pets in the property, or even the size of a property. I've seen them where they said no dogs over the amount of 50 pounds. So you got to be real careful on that. With the CCNRs will disclose that. You want to read it, just know what your buyer is in tune for. If they're wanting to build a second story, you want to look in those CCNRs to see if there's a restriction to the height, and we will show that in that document. And then there's also some restrictions in there that we'll talk about the type of structure that can be laid there. You got to be very careful about that if somebody wants to remodel the property too, if they want to make the roofs gable or that kind of thing. Those restrictions exist out in some areas, and so you got to be careful about that. So those will show up in the CCNRs, and we'll disclose that, and we'll report them all out. The very next document is another easement for public utilities. Like I said, we'll go ahead and we'll research all the easements in the CCNRs to make sure that we disclose them all to your buyer, and that the buyer actually is aware of what they're involved with there. So you might want to go on to the next one, Brett. So now we're going to get into the things that can really hold up or possibly thwart the escrow transaction. So what we'll disclose to you as well is all the mortgages on the property. So you'll see here we showed a deed of trust for $100,000 for this individual. So if they have multiple deeds of trust, we'll show all of those. And if they've done recent work, the next document will show, and if there's a recorded mechanic lien, we'll have to show that mechanic lien. And we'll show, as for title insurance purposes, we'll show mechanic liens up to 6 months to a year, depending on if we see that the property is still being worked on. And the reason being is because there could be some negotiations between the homeowner and the mechanic lien claimant that they're trying to pay off this mechanic lien. And so the mechanic lien claimant hasn't gone the next step. So theoretically, by law, when the mechanic lien records, within 90 days, they have to enforce the mechanic lien. They have to actually file an action to foreclose on the property. So if they don't do that, theoretically, the mechanic lien expires. But there's been some case law that actually has most of us concerned in our title industry that if a mechanic lien has been negotiated, that can extend the life of the mechanic lien without the action being recorded. So if you see one that's there longer than it should be, reach out to us, because that means we have some kind of belief or idea that it could still be ongoing. So if the property hasn't completed, they could possibly still be negotiating that mechanic lien, and we'll have to figure that out with the seller on that. And a lot of times too, is the property was just built and there's a lien period once the property is completed, and it's 90 days. So we'll show a lien period that allows a mechanic lien claimant to actually record the mechanic liens, and we'll have to do an indemnity to make sure that the mechanic liens are handled, and that the indemnitor, which is typically the seller, can vet to us that they've actually have paid all the mechanic liens and are able to pay any mechanic liens that may come up in the future, because again, they have a 90-day lien period. So say the property completed 10 days before the escrow is about to close, the mechanic lien claimant has an additional 80 days to still file a mechanic lien. So you got to be very careful with that. And when we go through our process, we're going to want to have an indemnity, so that way we protect the buyer in being able to keep them away from having mechanic liens record against the property. Brett, I see you have some kind of face that you want to interject there.
No. I was sorry. I wasn't. I was looking at something else. Sorry.
Okay. So just keep in mind, if you see a mechanic lien, that means we think that there's work done, and that there could be a possibility that the mechanic lien was still extended of some sort if it's there longer than it should be. But like I said, typically the life of it is only 90 days by law, but unfortunately there's been case law that that it has been extended longer because it was a negotiation process between the homeowner and the mechanic lien claimant.
And Bill,
now,
Hilda Hernandez
yeah.
has a question that she raised her hand.
Yeah.
You could unmute yourself, Hilda.
No, so going back to the mechanics lien.
Yes.
So whenever we sell a property where we know maybe that it was a flip or maybe that some work was done, should we always notify then our title officer and let them know, hey, we may be concerned, or just keep an eye out, or what do we do?
Yes. Yeah, no, the idea is you want to advise your title officer, because there's certain coverages that we do have, and then there's certain coverages we don't have. If you don't let us know, and a mechanic lien popped up after we closed the escrow and it affected the buyer can try to request a claim for us to cure the mechanic lien. But if the buyer knew about the actual mechanic lien or the work ongoing and didn't advise us of it, it's a clause that our policy has, which is a matter known to you that you did not disclose to us. We could actually decline that coverage. So definitely you want to actually come to us if you know there's work ongoing, and especially as a buyer, if you know there's been work done, extensive work, you want to come back to us and let us know, so that way we can actually make sure that we're covering the buyer appropriately. So yes, let us know if you do know there's been some work on the property. I'm not talking about, you know, painting a fence or, you know, that kind of thing. We're talking about some extensive work where they remodeled half the house or knocked down most of the house and restructured it, and that's what we're talking about, that kind of work being done. So you want to let us know about that, and so that way we appropriately insure the buyer and the buyer's lender, because like I said, there is a clause in the policy that says if you knew about the actual aspect and didn't let us know, you didn't allow us to actually act on it, and we could possibly decline the coverage. So you don't want to ever leave that to chance, and just get to us right away on that.
Is there a minimum on what the mechanics lien amount needs to be in order for a contractor to file a mechanics lien against a property?
No minimum.
Okay, so it could
No
be
minimum.
$1,000, it could be $10,000.
It could be $5. Yeah,
Okay.
no minimum. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it
Okay,
looks like
thank you.
Kathy King has a question too. Kathy?
Oh yeah. Hey, Kathy.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring this up at this point, I think, excuse me. I think many of us sell brand new houses, and we're selling $2, $3, $4 million houses. So there's a lot of construction work and the potential for a lot of mechanics liens. And I think in the sequence of timing, what happens is these houses are completed and immediately put on the market, so that 90 days most often hasn't passed when we're at the point we need to close escrow. I thought you might describe just in a little more detail on those types of transactions, what is going to be required of the builder or the developer in order to indemnify you and therefore have Cal Title in a position to issue a title report, and what maybe we can do with some of our clients ahead of time so that most of that financial information that you need from the developer, you will have already accumulated, and we aren't kind of running up against a deadline at the end.
Great question.
That's a good point, and I'm glad that you bring that up. So yes, to get
Thanks
a
for
detail
showing
to
up,
that
Kathy.
factor, to get a detail of that factor. So if you're aware of a flip and you're aware that the property was just recently completed, and you're on the listing side, you might want to get to Brett, myself, and let us know about that, because we don't want to find that out at the last moment and then hold up the transaction and have to ask for all the indemnity documentation that's needed. So what we're going to ask for the developer or the seller to provide us with is one, an indemnity, basically, you know, indemnifying us, the California Title, and our underwriter, that they're going to go ahead and cure any kind of mechanical liens that would record in between the lien period. So that's one factor. The next factor is they're going to have to send us the cost of the project. So the project tells us that the cost of the project tells us that it's less than the actual sales price. So it wouldn't make any sense if they send us the cost of the project and the project costs $5 million and they're only selling the house for $4 million. All of a sudden we're going to go like, wait, why is that happening here? So we'll ask for a cost breakdown or contract of the actual project. The next thing we're going to ask for is the sellers or the developers' financials. And what that is for is we need to be able to vet that they can actually back up the indemnity. If somebody only has $25,000 in their assets and they're selling a home that's $1 million and they did $800,000 worth of work, we'll kind of get ourselves concerned with do they have the ability to be able to handle that indemnity and back it up. So that's why we ask for the financials. And a lot of people always say, well, why do you need their financials if they're already indemnifying you? That's because of that reason. We need to make sure that they can actually back up the indemnity, and we need to see that they have enough funds to vet the indemnity. A lot of times what we'll do is, if they don't have enough money to back up the indemnity, is we'll start asking for paid invoices and a contractor's lien waiver from the subs and the general contractor. That's usually not the case on a typical base. That's on a one-off situation where we don't think that the seller or the developer has enough financials to back the indemnity. So you'll see that every once in a while. We'll say, okay, we need to now see that who you paid, and we need lien waivers from each party that you paid that worked on the property. And basically that's their commitment that they've been paid and they're not going to file them mechanically. And that takes about 7 days to process. So if, you know, like I said, if we find out at the last moment, you have a 30-day escrow, we did an inspection, and then we get the documentation at the last moment, that could hold up your transaction. So be real, you know, mindful of that. I'm glad you brought that up, Kathy. The other thing is too, is if you have a repeat client that does this, let us know, because what we can do is get them to be an approved indemnitor with our underwriter, so we don't have to keep asking for all the documentation that's necessary for the indemnity. We can dummy some of the documentation required down because we have a successful and approved indemnitor. So just keep that in mind if you have somebody that comes about and is doing this often, and you know, we don't want to upset them and say, hey, we need this. Why are you guys asking for that document? So I already gave you that before. So if we know about it up front, we can actually get them on a list where we don't have to ask for anything but the indemnity and the cost breakdown of that project, because those are strictly to that project and nothing else, not their backup financials and such forth. So I'm glad you brought that up, and that's another class we should probably have at one point, because it's a lengthy time frame.
Well, I will say that it really helps with these builders if the agent can establish a relationship with Cal Title up front or during construction, so that you're not waiting till the end to do that. And then maybe, like you said, get set up as a repeat client.
Yep.
That would be a good idea.
Yeah.
Hey guys, as I'm watching the hourglass tick away, just in case we get locked out really quick, re-click your link back in, because we only have the free account. I got to talk to Dave Herb about this. So if we do get logged out right now, which we're going to in a couple seconds, just re-click your link and we'll start the meeting over again, and we'll get another meeting going. I do apologize. We've been on for 45 minutes and that's where we're at. So if you have more questions, we can actually just log back in. So.
Yeah, we're almost at the end of this. So, you know, well, at least to the nitty-gritty part. So, so the next document, so you'll see the next document in here is an abstract of judgment. So keep in mind, like I said, we do a preliminary search and we'll show judgments that we think exactly hit the property and the property owner. So in this case, because the owner is he too sharp, was not a difficult name to search. So this is called a general index